Well, thank you. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me to come and give a talk. And in fact, I have to say that choosing the topic was not entirely a trivial matter. So I thought, I'm going to give a high-level talk perhaps about an interesting historical figure. And so my first title was about Girolamo Cardano. And I wanted to, once upon a time, I wrote a historical paper about an interesting character who invented, in a way, or discovered probability theory and also complex numbers. But then I just realized that looking at some other titles that may be too popular. And then I thought maybe I'll give a technical talk. But then I thought that in 20 minutes I cannot give a serious technical talks. But I was wrong because obviously many of my colleagues managed to do that. So then I just ended up somewhere in between. But then I just realized probably picking up anything would be good, right? So just giving the variety and the diversity of the talks that I've heard. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about how our sort of struggle and quest to understand randomness nicely sort of coincided with the quest to design the most secure system and how the basic science helps applied crypto. So hence the title, how curiosity-driven research ended up designing probably the most secure crypto system that we can hope for. So starting about, well, let me take the historical perspective on this. So, so the concept of randomness, of course, existed and was discussed, and people thought about it since time immemorial. But it always is always good to refer to the Greeks, ancient Greeks. And probably is always to go to pick up Aristotle, right? So he was certainly the one who thought about it. And in his physics and metaphysics, he referred to chance or randomness. And being Aristotle, he always classified those things, right? So then he decided that there are events that are certain and there are those that are probable and those that just happen. And the last one, the one that just happens, is something that is very difficult for us to comprehend, right? So we have this sort of thinking about the causal structure of the universe. There is a reason for everything. So we think about events that there's always a history to any event. And having this sort of like, I try to illustrate this with those timelines here, having something that just starts, right, and propagates is a little bit difficult for us to digest. And I think Aristotle recognized that this kind of thing is beyond science, right? So not exactly in his words, but the essence of his, as long as we can really interpret Aristotle in modern language. So the idea was essentially that you have to go, I mean, it goes beyond the rational domain. But of course, if something is beyond rational domain and doesn't necessarily mean you cannot play with it and try to quantify it, and especially if you have a rational gambler. So this is actually the guy I wanted to talk about. So the person who, amazing character, an amazing Renaissance man of 16th century, Girolamo Cardano, was the first one who came up with the concept of probability. So it was like 100 before the French researchers like Fermat and Pascal started thinking about it. So he should certainly be given credit for this. So he wrote a manual for gamblers where he quantified probability and showed how to enumerate events and how to play with it. And so even though you don't know exactly the origin of chance, but you can still measure it, right? And the other reason I like Cardano is that he was also the one in his other book, he came up with square root of negative numbers. So somehow when I teach quantum physics, I like to start with Cardano because he has two tools that we use, like complex number for probability